Yeah,
Hey,
welcome everybody. It's October 24th today, 1 week from Halloween. When I say happy Dojo to everybody, it's Dojo 2.70. And I'm Cameron, who will be moderating today. So far, I think mostly familiar faces. Uh, there's a Suze's iPad that I don't recognize, but I just want to say welcome to everyone and thank you for being here. It's been a busy week at James True Live. Enjoyed all the content, including the interview that he conducted yesterday with Carmen Struder Smith. Um, I feel like there were more episodes than this, but I have on my ledger here Politics of Revenge today, Phantom of the Psy Opera yesterday, and then One Nation Under God before that. Uh, I guess we did the live transmission over Zoom before that, but it's been a startling week. One thing that didn't come up today that has been on my mind a little bit has been the politics of Snap and uh, and just another news story that I don't feel favors uh, the incumbent party. And I don't know who puts that out because I think that people that support the incumbent party are very in favor of that. I see the way it's being portrayed. I see videos coming to me of people complaining about Snap, and it's always a specific type of person. Uh, but around for any hands, I don't see any. James talks about the politics of revenge, and it makes me feel that vengeance does allow us to look past our hatred of jackboots on the streets and the names of the people that deserve it getting what's coming to them. I really fear for that as far as the underprivileged people who can't say no to a $50,000 uh, signing bonus or college tuition forgiveness. And maybe that's me being too sympathetic to people who might be in a position to say yes to something like that, because when I look at the work being done, it's hard for me to find the humanity.
yeah, you can't really be in the avenue for sanctity at that point. You really are. You're just showing where you're at and what you need to survive. If you're gonna have to steal food, that's not gonna come because you're inherently evil and Satan exists. It's gonna come because you live in a mode where you feel you have to steal food, right? Like it's just difficult to see that. We've had this discussion before where if you met someone who was quote quote homeless. And I don't deny there's not serious issues out there, but I'm just saying even the words we're using to put onto it. But if you think about what we do and we say, well, I don't want him to use this money to feel better. Like I don't, I don't want him to go take this money and put it into drugs or go buy some liquor or go shoot it up his arm or whatever. And this is an interesting place to be, to think that you know what's best for them, that you know if you were in their position what they feel would be the very best thing that could happen to them right now, and you insist it's not a fix. That what you need more than anything is, I need to take you to TJ Maxx and buy you some clothes. Just think about what it is. You're jonesing for something else, and you're having to do this, or someone saying, well, I'm going to go get you some food. I'm going to go pick what you're going to eat. I'm going to bring it back to you, and I'm going to watch you eat it because you're going to be thankful. What kind of exchange is that really, is what I'm saying.
Experienced, I've had to address my own naivety in that realm where someone might be asking, a panhandler might be asking for money. I try to bring them a sandwich and I see the reaction. I don't know if that's even on the verb or on the vein, in the vein of what you're discussing just now, except for that politically, I do see, or not politically, philosophically, I do see that there are problems with a social safety net, or at least the way I was raised. And I was raised in more of what you might consider the right wing fashion. The social safety net ends up being a capture net. It ends up because you're always coming to a place for your sustenance. You don't find that well, or that, you mentioned free energy today as something that could possibly be accomplished in yoga. Uh,
Yeah, sorry about
finding no, finding your own well of. And again, though, I mean, I take it too far because I don't. It's not always about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. I don't like that Snap has been withdrawn, and I wonder. I if I'm sorry, I'm going to step back, James, for a minute and say that
it.
I embarrassed myself last week. I've admitted to the group that I basically get all of my news through your lens at this point. Yet last week during the dojo, I asked the question with regarding ICE and their presence on the street, being in rental cars, in unverified, no uniforms that present any identification. I asked whether that was a sign of cunning or a sign of such a low rent, low budget operation. I regretted that afterwards because I've heard other cases where they are using military vehicles that were used in other countries. So maybe they do have a stronger presence than that. But as I watch all of this, including like Trump's coin that's coming out, uh, all these news stories that I see coming across my scroll, I just feel like this this United States experiment is its time is done. And I feel like everything Trump is doing is just creating plausibility
Yeah,
so that
that
so
it
that
is
our
done, right?
private debtors don't go under for what,
Yeah,
we borrowed the money to police the world and we're broke from it.
yeah.
But again, I'm speaking from a place of ignorance, and I don't want to embarrass myself by getting ahead of
Well,
what
do
my
you think do you think that removing SNAP would be a positive effort if your goal was to create an atmosphere that could be posed as a civil war to a court system? In other words, if you were going to go to court and say, "Look, we're under civil war. People are attacking our federal agents on the street." If you wanted to make that case, then removing SNAP would probably help that case because you would have more instances of examples to show that the people are at unrest. Case in point, in Gaza, these Palestinians they're fucking mad because we like killed them and stuff, and so they're throwing rocks at us. So we gotta keep doing this. We gotta keep pounding them down until they don't. So if you wanted to keep attacking, if you wanted to keep, it's not even attacking anymore. If you just wanted to keep slaughtering, what's happening in Gaza, you just need, it would really help if just one of them would throw a rock at you. It would help the PR campaign. So you would actually, that would be your main weapon, would be the mind war. That would be this is not an accident. Your main weapon would be what kind of press releases can I expect my most loyal followers that will stretch the truth to the umpth degree can I use to send to a court, the Ninth Court of Appeals, and say, look at this video from Portland, the ICE facility. How do you expect us to function? Of course, this is a civil war. Of course, we have to put federal troops down. And that you would know exactly how to fill this bellow with air in June, and you would know how to put it under your elbow, and you would put that tiny pipe in your hand and just squeeze, and the loudest, squawkiest goose sound would come out, and it wouldn't end until you're out of breath. And if this shuts down the election, I told you so with an I'm sorry that I said that elections aren't real. That's how fucking confusing this mind war is, because there's different levels of what is real, but more importantly, there's different levels of what mythology believes, of what the mythology believes. So even when I'm saying elections aren't real, I also know that they actually are kind of real, and that this could still be used as a tenet to move people. So if it's a voting machine, if it's the election is invalid because this guy doesn't have a birth certificate, all they're doing is just looking, what happens if I step on this toe? What happens if I step on this one? And the The squeezing sounds can be used just to validate and justify what's next. And the justification is not to them, right? As you were saying, Cameron, all it takes is just to create the auspice that this could be necessary because enough people will be too afraid of not having law and order that they will start to justify the jackboots themselves because by God, we have to have law and order. Like that's my I can't afford to think that. Therefore, even though ICE agents are doing this in Manhattan, even though they're running tanks through and running out and just pulling people inside and driving away, that this is still law and order because clearly these guys must have clearly done something or it has to certainly this is and this is this psyche, you understand this psyche because you know your enemy like Mossad knows theirs. These are fucking pros, man. Like they put Washington D.C. to shame. And I think you understand why so many politicians align with them because this is their apprentice. This is that place they go to learn how to make change. And ultimately, all they need is righteousness. And ultimately, all they need is a deep disrespect for the American voter and their ability to think. If you have those two things, you have a philosopher king. And you can call it an oligarchy if you want, but an oligarchy is philosopher king. It's not called a plutarchy. I think that's the right term. Oligarchy doesn't require money. Oligarchy just requires a few. And if it doesn't require money, that's a philosopher king. Both sides are fighting against a philosopher king. Both sides are waging war against us having a philosopher king. We want a majority king. We want a mob king. And that's what we'll get. A philosopher king would never fucking attack Venezuela. Philosopher king would probably go over to Israel and kidnap Netanyahu and drag him back to the States and put him on a cross in the middle of the yard and let people throw oranges and tomatoes at him for a while. Spray poop on him. I swear to you, that's what a philosopher king would do. And he'd say, BB makes them stop and we will stop. If not, we got a lot of chili dogs, BB. We got a lot of. You're not going to like what America eats. Our diet is so bad. That's a philosopher king. It's a very different way of ruling. The mob's going to be what's in it for us, what's going to allow us to pillage the most. Every election is a pillage, isn't it? Every election is if we can get enough of our mob into the door, we can take Snap away and say, fuck you. Fuck you, Democrats. You built your name on Snap. Fuck you. And Gavin Newsom falls for it because he's like, I'm going to release my own poop video. Doesn't even see. Like, can't even see that. Right? So whose fault is this? Like, who's really who's really asking for this to happen, you know? Because honestly, at this point, I'm kind of rooting for China, guys. Like, I'm literally just like, go China, go. Because they, you know what they did? I meant to play this yesterday. There's a, sorry, I don't know his title, but one of the main dudes in China said, he's being interviewed on press. What do you think about all the tariffs? And China goes, we don't fucking care. We've been here for thousands of years. Your country literally has been here for a few hundred. We don't need you. We've never needed you. It's not even an issue for us. And that's the only good guy I've seen. Like, that's the only one that I'm just like, oh, that's fucking cool. That's great. Oregon, it's hard for me to call them good guys. I think their hearts are in the right place, but I don't think they have enough zest to understand what's required right now. That they need their own wrenches. And I think they have too much sanctity for that. And I'm not going to blame that either. This is why I come back to we are the land of veal. We are really good veal. This is this is us being real veal like. And even if the election doesn't happen and the civil war occurs and it's all distributed from that, Anyone who predicted that, anyone who saw that, it's meaningless. Look at Aquino. That's like the saddest case you could imagine. This guy is such a, he's probably like a really great guy. No shit, I swear. He's probably like a really great guy. It's like, I want to go sit down with Anti LaVey because I want to sit down with anybody. Like, that's probably who he is.
A side note here, James, but it just as it happens, this morning my dad asked me had I read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and I said, it's in the library, but not cover to cover. But and then for some reason I mentioned that I had heard that the Egyptian Book of the Dead was actually properly translated as Book of uh, Walking in the Light of Day. And then I sent a screenshot of Michael Aquino, and then my dad said he purchased one of his books. I don't know which one, but my dad's on the side who is very agitated right now by Snap and everything. He sent me some stuff about Trump's coin yesterday, which I'd already heard. You've long acknowledged and pushed that what we know is nothing compared to what we believe. And you've also been not voting for a while. Um, Unregistered, in fact, take it a step further, unregistered, and not just not participate. Um, I really feel like here, I mean, it almost seems like the point is that everyone's nightmare is fully realized. Um, and that well, I see. If I didn't even think about that as being a consequence of Snap, agitating the public to create a situation to where elections could be shut down. But it's well, how do I wonder how to take that because I haven't believed in the legitimacy of elections for a long time, anyways. And so for it to be shut down, I guess it is just to stimulate our capacitance for belief, to believe that something that was there is being taken away or
Yeah. You know, ultimately, like if everyone in America would come to a dojo, like, and they were wanted to bring up the topic of Snap, I would say, why did you give that money to the government? And hope they would give it to this other, like, what? Can you walk through the thinking of that, please? I'd like to hear that. And then I just have them come out on the mat, right? And just explain their system about how the government does, and I just be like, so you're gonna give it all to Washington, and then you're thinking they're gonna give you a percentage of that back, and then once you get that back, then your governor is gonna give it to all the mayors, and then the mayors is gonna give it. Is this where you're at? And the answer would have to be yes. And one of the fundamental things that I think the Democrats could reach Republicans on is understanding why, instead of calling a Republican selfish, you could say a Republican doesn't believe that that's who should get that money. That whether it be they think the government is invalid or inefficient, I'm just saying most Republicans want to feel like they're good people. They want to feel like that's happening. But when you start to define what charity really is, what it's supposed to look like and what it's not, I don't know if either side are practicing that, because the fact that it's violently pulled from you, in my mind, makes it not charity. You're not able to give charity to something, and you're using it to just feel that you have protection money. You're stealing from the church to give it to the mafia. And you'll do that as long as the mafia will let you complain that they didn't spend the money right. That's the only ask you've had of the mafia is, look, I'll give you the money that I was going to give to them as long as you'll let me complain about it and call you names. And mafia's like, yeah, fuck yeah, man, do it. That works for me. As long as I can get more out of you, it'll work. And like, yeah, you can get more out of us. If you help us create this illusion, we will give you more. And that's why I don't consider anything in our taxes as legally able to be assigned as um, charity. I want you to listen to this, please. I'm pretty sure that I can do this. I want to do share sound, and I want to open this in QuickTime. And now that it's here in QuickTime, I should be. I think I have to do it again. Let me just hit share again. Close that. I should have played this today, Let's listen to what Tucker says about what he thinks about what charity is. He doesn't use the word charity, but just hear this out. Hopefully this will play.
Explain to me who Satoshi was, the creator of Bitcoin, this mysterious. And nobody can explain to me who Satoshi was, the creator of Bitcoin, this mysterious guy who apparently died, but nobody knows who he was. You know, I grew up in DC primarily in a government family, so CIA. That's my guess. Can't prove it, but like, you're telling me to invest in something whose founder is like mysterious and has billions of dollars of unused Bitcoin. Like, what is that? And no one can answer the question, including some of the biggest holders of Bitcoin in the world. Do I know personally? They're like, oh, it doesn't matter. It matters to me, right? And nobody can explain to me who Satoshi.
So Satoshi is the acronym for the person who wrote the the Bitcoin white paper. You guys still there? Let me make sure I'm not sharing anymore. Okay. Wrote the Bitcoin white paper, and Tucker is sharing a sentiment that a lot of Republicans have, a lot of people that are anti-Bitcoin. By the way, this is not a pro. I swear, this is not a pro-Bitcoin thought. I mean, it sort of is, but just let me say it. He's saying that he cannot leave the petrodollar. He cannot leave a system of currency where a central banking authority is allowed to print as much money as they want and then loan it to our country. And then we're supposed to bitch at each other about our own debt for it. And it's supposed to be used as a system to tax us even more, to explain over and over again why we can't stop the Civil War tax that's still in place today from the fucking Civil War. And the reason why is because of the petrodollar, which is happens to be the one thing that Venezuela said, fuck you guys, we're going with Bitcoin, that we're going with something that's not the petrodollar. And that you have someone like Tucker Carlson at the pinnacle of conservative thought who rejects the idea that someone out of the goodness of their heart through anonymity would give a large sum of money in order to start a new financial system. He's literally telling you that the very tenets of what he considers to be conservatism are impossible to have, and that someone who would find the petrodollar so disgusting would ever spend some of their billions of dollars to create a new monetary system and purposely not put their name on it so that it would be seen as potlatch, so it would be seen as a gift. The largest gift Gaia has ever dropped on our asses is being rejected as a NWO plot to take over the world, and that both sides agree. Whatever you do, don't you dare fucking buy Bitcoin. Whatever you do, you keep hiding money because therefore you have anonymity. And forgive me for repeating it, but I just wanted the record to hear this. There is nothing anonymous about being forced to go to an ATM and withdraw a maximum of $500 cash from a machine that has your address, your driver's license, your license plate number, your credit score, your employer, your mortgage. Every single thing about you is tied to your bank account, which is tied to the petrodollar. And we're pretending that that information isn't already accessible by the FDIC, which is like, are you fucking high? That the FDIC doesn't have access to our bank accounts to ensure that the $100,000 they're claiming that they're insuring, isn't that the way they get in? Is to say, well, look, I promise $100,000 as long as we can look at all your records. Isn't this, you cannot get more naive. You cannot get more hyena. And I don't need you to like Bitcoin to see this. You don't have to like Bitcoin to see this, guys. You don't. But for the first time, Gaia brought you a currency that is limited, that is an open ledger that's not attached to your identification at all. Yes, they can track when you buy Bitcoin, but why can they track it? Because you've got a fucking checking account on the petrodollar. That's how they track you. That they track the petrodollar buying the crypto. And then once it buys the crypto, now they know who you are. But if they did not know, if you could go up to an ATM machine, and they had these in Miami, they had these in Vegas, and they were declared illegal by the Democrats. And for a brief period of time, you could go to those. And I'm sure the cameras were still there. Don't get me wrong. But this was like the closest time, the closest chance we had to enter into a true self-private money market where your money is none of my business. None of it. And we rejected it wholeheartedly. From the very first moment it came out, we rejected it. And now that Trump's bought Bitcoin, it means if I tell you I think Bitcoin's cool, I'm a fucking magatarian. I'm now pro Trump because of it. And the white paper is published. The algorithm is you can download the code, run it on your own machine, test it from trillions of angles, try every single bit of it. You can literally start your own node. You can go out and say, I am a node on the Bitcoin mine. Come to me and I will resolve your transactions for you and prove that they're valid. And I will only be able to do this if I have 12 other nodes that are validating my validity. And the entire thing is built on a system of I know this guy, I know this guy, I know this guy, I know this guy's. Okay, let's say that this is legit now. And you have the first bioregional communal system of currency. And we ran away from it. We're running away from it as fast as we can. So understand our consciousness. Don't use it to get mad. Sorry for my passion. Just understand our consciousness. Understand what we're capable of right now. And we're not quite there yet. Brad, you had your hand up. Anyway, thanks, Cameron.
Brad, you want to go ahead and unmute if you'd like to share anything. Otherwise, just raise your hand next time you feel so compelled. I'm
sorry.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
was stepping out for a minute. I was just going to add to the idea of complaining about the type of people that complain about welfare and Snapchat and things like that, or it's not Snapchat, excuse me. But what's always fascinated me is the idea that they choose to focus on that. And when you actually look at the numbers, there's a couple of things. One, welfare in general, the social safety nets are such a small portion of the pie, and that the people who are benefiting from them are hardly the ones who are in power to enact them in the first place. And in the same token, when their party, like in Iraq, when Bush was in the office, and they say we just lost $800 billion. Whoops, we don't know where it went. There's no outrage from the same people who complain about welfare. And so that to me has just always been a sort of a telling thing about the psychology of that. And it really does seem to come down to like the whole pull yourself up by the bootstraps thing is very like it's not genuine. Do you know what I'm saying? Because we don't live in a society where many people are actually taking care of themselves independently from the ground up. It's like we actually live in a society where there are systems in place, and it's really just about access at that point then, isn't it? And people who are complaining about welfare typically are not in a position to need it. They're fortunate enough to not be in that situation of lack and need. But then, because I've seen this happen too, I've seen them fall into that position, start getting unemployment and things like this, and still maintain their politics, even though I'm bringing up to them, you're actively, like, because they know what they're doing. They're saying they're trying to do what they can do to stay on either disability, because I saw that too, or unemployment welfare. And then they're in that mode of like, I'm trying to keep this check coming in, but they're completely oblivious to their own it's funny to watch. I will say one of my friends did acknowledge that when I brought it to his attention. He did acknowledge it and say he was right. And I don't know if he continues to complain about welfare, but this is just interesting to see people's psychology.
Yeah,
that was it.
It's a great point. And I think there's a lot to that. There's been times when I've been really just disgusted by that same we'll call it welfare fraud, but it's really not fraud, is it? It's a system that says, look, if you can maintain these things, then you can maintain this check. And it's weird that we're suggesting that they wouldn't want to take advantage of that someone wouldn't go out of their way to try and stay on that.
Because they do, yeah.
Especially when they maybe did need help initially, and now that it's there, they have that. Now they have more calories, and the first thing they're going to want to spend those calories on is preserving all the calories that they have. So, and I think, Brad, this goes at the heart of a very advanced lesson, which I don't expect us to be at collectively for a long time, and I'm okay with that. But more moral leaders could use this as a principle of teaching charity itself, that Your charity is not based on how well it's spent. Your charity has zero to do with the causality of where that charity goes. If your mind is sold that I will give you charity because you will eat a sandwich, that's not charity. That is you trying to force them to do something using money. And there's nothing wrong with that. The world does that all the time. There's lots of people that are like, hey, if you do this, I'll give you some money. And people are like, hey, I will do this for money. So that's not the problem, but it's also not charity. That's not the definition of charity. This is a financial transaction that people are discussing. And they're discussing the financial transaction under the auspice tent of charity, of public good or public whateverness. And then when you start to use the word public good, now you're really fucked because you've still replaced charity with I have to produce good. I'm buying good with this. My taxes are here to buy good. And that's a very evil thing, believe it or not. Like you can do a lot of fucking evil with that. You can do a lot. But you know what happens in Rome is you don't sit there and say I'm going to burn some alms for this pagan god, but he better get me laid tonight or he better get me drunk, you know, whatever it is you're going to exchange your prayers for. If you have a ceremony where you're burning the money in public, isn't that what taxes are now? Isn't this what the Christians were complaining about because they felt that it was defiling their sense of giving? Their basic idea of what potlatch should be looked very different than this. It wasn't a public transaction. It wasn't forced. And maybe, just maybe, it really wasn't about what are you going to do with that? That the pagans would leave food on the altar and not get mad if something didn't eat it properly or how it disappears or if it's not there. It's some would. Some would. So really you're looking at people lacking just an understanding of what charity really is. And more importantly, I think this is a bigger lesson. In a way, they're throwing a ball, but they can't let go. That they're just need help letting go. They can't disassociate from that money because that money gave them identity. This kind of makes sense, doesn't it? When I was a kid, my father owned a seafood restaurant and he would go out into the Tampa, he would leave the Tampa Bay and go out in the Gulf and capture fish and come back and cook it. And I was with him and he was showing me how to cast and I threw the rod and it just kept going. The rod just went into the ocean. It was it's so tricky to understand. You're throwing something, but you're also holding on to something. It's very specific action that requires a lot of motor coordination that apparently I don't have. And then in a way, charity is the same thing. And even understanding what our taxes are I think would allow us to remove ourselves from government because if we could detach ourselves from that tax, we could detach ourselves from expecting a good or a service to be rendered to us appropriately as if that somehow justifies us giving. We give because we're afraid. We give because they will take your home away. We give because there's a monopoly of violence and everyone around you wants you to give. That's why you give. And this is what I've said before. I could see a morality in taxes if it's creating an immune system for you. Do you see what I mean? That if you paying taxes allows you to sleep better at night, knowing no one's going to take something from you, I think you should pay that. You should afford that. As I've said before, if I get more patrons, I'm going to start paying taxes. It'll be fucking great. I'm going to be like, fuck yeah. And we'll explain to you consciously why. Here's how I sleep better. It feels fucking amazing. This is so much better. And then you'd also see me really, really have a much harder time, honestly, with what's happening right now, guys. So I don't want you to hear me try and lie to you to say that I'm not paying taxes because I'm a sanctimonious philosophical motherfucker. That's not why. I wish that was why. And I hope that my authenticity is appreciated in this. That I'm telling you the reason why is because I'm afraid. That's why I would pay. And the reason why I'm not paying is because it's so expensive because of what I do and where I'm at and just a lot of other things that aren't even important right now that I have trouble paying it. and that trouble is not worth it in relation to how safe I feel from it. And I wish that I could say it's all about how we treat Palestine or all about how we treat SNAP. I wish it could be that noble, but it's not. The prawn economy is much grosser, and I only get benefits based on the weather. Trump makes it so much easier for me not to pay taxes. The last thing, what's going to suck the most is if Mandabi, this dude from New York, comes and, he's like this amazing dude and you just want to participate. I'm going to be like, fuck, I got to pay taxes because I want to feel better. It'll be that way. This is the closest I can come to truly gripping morality in that way. And I'd like to think if I was a beyonder and I had billions of dollars, the first fucking thing I would do is meet as many friends as I could and say, let's invent Bitcoin. Let's enjoy knowing that we fucking made this and we rolled this out in front of the world and we didn't tell a soul. Let's watch Trump freak the fuck out and move all of his money into our own monetary fund. This is revolution. This would be the thing that you could do to change the entire system, and you would not want credit for it because you don't need it. You don't need it because you have enough. You've got more than enough. This is about legacy. And when you look at what Trump's doing, that insane psychopath is working on legacy too. That's all he's doing. He wants to be Roosevelt in 100 years. He wants to be that. And please forgive
Franklin or Teddy?
his attitude is saying, fuck you guys until I get there. Fuck all of you. I'm only interested in what the people 100 years now think of me after all of you fucks are dead. Because you saw what I did, but they don't. They won't. And he knows this, right? He knows the history of every president, of every king. He knows how this works. There's probably a secret saying that they all tell each other, like, Unitu Vufika Fufa, which means fuck the local time because all that matters is the long, long from now, or whatever, some shit like that. It's probably some Latin phrase that's in some sacred book in some underground tomb where some virgin was like sacrificed, and it's right there. And that knowledge has been there the whole time. And he's just pulling from those cards. Sorry, Cameron, go ahead.
I interrupted with this silly question: which Roosevelt, Franklin or Teddy? I baselessly speculated with my father this morning when he's complaining about Trump's coin that he might hand out his debit card to replace Snap. And maybe in the spirit of what you said about would you be willing to put on the uniform or the disguise of your enemy and hang out in that crowd to understand. And you talk about higher resolution exercises. He could hand out this EBT card and glean a fraction of the money that is being raised for himself, just to show how it's always worked in the first place. And Trump's not my hero. I've proven to myself over the last 44 years that I'm not, in fact, a very principled person. It wasn't until 2020 that I really found, till I finally had just a razor sharp clarity of vision to where nothing mattered but what I saw there. But I don't think I'm a super principled person, especially like with the monetary system. I just want healthy, energetic fluency with me and my fellow, whatever we're exchanging. And I should have started by saying I don't want to naysay crypto. I'm not naysaying it. I think it is the future, and we would do better to invest more in it. We're getting pressured by people to do gold and other things, and in every market still, I mostly see speculation.
On that note, if you think about what would be the true revolutionary act right now, and let's just say it's not Bitcoin. Let's say that we know Bitcoin is bad, but we understood what it is. What would happen is a grassroots movement would start that would create its own token, and that this token would gain enough popularity where all of us would agree to buy this token overnight. This is like what No Kings is. Imagine if everyone, instead of going to a protest, removed $20 from the US system and place it in a tribal kind of coin, a token. I say tribal on purpose, like Monero or Pirate Chain, ARR or Bitcoin or whatever, insert your favorite token. And that over time, people would start to compete because we'd start to understand that for the very first time, the prana has been liberated from the petrodollar. Your personal prana has been liberated from the petrodollar. And if that was done enough, you would see a law that would say your taxes are not required in dollars. They're required for you to spend your Roman sacrifice at 3 p.m. every day has to just go to your crypto token of choice. And as we discussed with smart contracts, a lot of people would find, a lot of Democrats would go, I want a fucking smart contract that says this isn't going to go to war. And a lot of Republicans would say, I want a smart contract that says this isn't going to go to fucking snap. And you'd have a Home Depot sponsored F 14. You'd have an aircraft carrier made by Walmart. And it truly would be a more honest, authentic system. And it would thrive because Hobby Lobby would feel we need more fighter jets. And they would spend that money on them. And they would be proud. All their prana would be used exactly like they wanted it to be. This is Cajun fucking Navy, right? And it would really be a whole new world in that way. I think that this is what the controllers want too. I swear to you, I've compassionated what it's like to invent Bitcoin. And when you do that, you're going to want a philosopher oligarchy in charge of the fucking world. You're going to want that. You're going to say, dude, we got to have this. We need 50 sachem. And these 50 sachem are going to meet. We need a city called Kazakhstan or Astana, and we need a fucking sacred Masonic temple where that's bigger than all the others, where the city itself has all the symbolism that you could not repeat unless you put a lot of money into it. And if we can find a sacred ley line in Astana that matches up with all this stuff, we're going to have to sink a phoenix at 2012 in the ground, and we're going to have to flood that snake with water because no one else has done that. So now Astana has this historic Masonic symbolism built into it, in a sacred pyramid symbol on the back of your dollar's already been built, and it's called the Palace of Peace and Reconciliation. And meanwhile, all of us are just like, snap and fuck you and Bitcoin and da da da. And you'd hear all the people chanting, and you know that this is the tremor of the vibration that's necessary to bring everyone in tune. And the only way we can force everyone in tune is to make the sound so fucking unbearable, so full of poop juice all over the place, that people would have no other choice but to want peace and reconciliation. And it would be the only way you could pull this off. And if we could pull this off, we will control the fucking world and leave it alone. We will create a bioregionalism where the people can fucking go insane having their own patriotic ideas of our beer is the best and our team's the best and our soybeans are the best. And you'd want that. You'd want that competition. But you'd want one snakes in hair to rule them all. You'd want one Kono Takarius. You'd want one village burner in charge of it all. You'd realize until you had that village burner, this system is just a virgin, just like smearing her naked body in honey, running out in spring, just like, hello, everyone. Hi, how's it going? I'm fertile. And it's like, so you would understand what it requires. You would feel so righteous. You would be so in love with the population and feel so righteous that you'd want to protect them, that you'd want to put peanuts out every night. You'd want to have a SNAP program. You'd have all this stuff, and you wouldn't need credit. You wouldn't give a shit if someone's paying for it or not, or who's paying more. None of that would be a factor at all. And that system would stabilize. And ultimately, it's where we're going. And I'll tell you why we don't like it. It's boring. It's predictable. It doesn't have the drama. It's going to be an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation for like thousands of years. and we're going to go down to Ghana and get a little drink, and we're going to discuss the funny intricacies of being a robot versus being a human, and how all gelflings from the planet Endor are the same, and we're just going to live in this perpetual idea that we're all just at peace because we're all wearing the same uniform. And instead of practicing war, we're practicing science instead. I think ultimately people are like, that sounds like shit to me. This is what I think. And the closer you come to it, the more people are having angst about that. And it could be an ancient memory. It could be the oldest epigenetic trauma we've ever experienced. Could be that. Could be what happens when we become omniscient and everything is seen. So your fight for identity, digital ID, it's all intuiting what's coming and where we've been. And so it's a fear of knowing. It's not a fear of what's coming. It's a fear of realizing that what we have a deep fear of is happening, which means that memory's real. That's probably what we're freaking out about.
You talk about snakes and hair as the appropriate leader, or at least, forgive the thunder and lightning. And I could think that Netanyahu might fit that bill, except for that, he's not openly the leader of our nation, or, depending on who you ask. And you mentioned Astana, which is, I feel like it's a huge blind spot for people. Um, Might be drifting from the point, but there was a time where the Apocrypha was very important to me to get outside of the Bible stories. And one story in particular that really touched me, maybe it was because it was so easy to read, but it was Daniel and Bel and the dragon. And uh, King Cyrus, his he asked Daniel why he wasn't worshiping the Babylonian or Baal, and he said that Baal was made with human hands. It's not. I don't worship that. I worship the unseen. And he's like, but what do you mean? We bring in all this food every night, and this God eats it. This is a living creature. This is. And he's like, he puts his life on the line, goes in there, goes ash all over the floor to prove that the priest class had been coming in there with their family and friends and eating all the food. So King Cyrus gets upset, kills everybody. Then he's asked, "What about this dragon? Uh, this is a real living creature, which I always imagined as a very large snake." And Daniel says, "I can kill it without sword or staff." He ends up feeding it hairy clumps of pitch, pitchy hairy, and kills the snake. And Cyrus is like, "You're God's king," the people come back to Cyrus and say, "You're turning into a Jew. Deliver us this Daniel." And so he takes Daniel, throws him in the lion's den. Daniel survives. Um, these long systems, before the United States, which is like a 275, 300-year empire, I guess, if we're even an empire. I haven't been in places in the world. I have not seen Astana. I've seen Chicago and Philadelphia and Los Angeles. And I've also seen cities in China that I used to think of China as a particular way, and I see pictures that aren't from my own media that show these city after city of millions and millions of people and huge skyscrapers. And I don't know how elite our land actually is. I know that's what we were told. I'm drifting from the point, except for I don't know. It's still murky to me, what our role is here, and what the empire is, and if we are moving towards a boring millennium of or if some people are trying to avoid that. I'm just totally drifting from any point, James. I'm sorry about that.
It's great stuff. I don't think that we're capable of seeing the whole thing, that you would need a collective omniscience to understand it all. And so the only way, this is the wisdom of the crowd, right? It's, the only way you're going to know this is from that colossal perspective. This is an elephant. and you're a man, and you're trying to understand things that are octaves beyond us. And these, I think a lung is a really good analogy. And if you ask yourself what you're here to insert oxygen in the system. You're here. That's what you're here for. And the lung is breathing, remembering and forgetting, remembering and forgetting. And so your personal epigenetic memories are coming to the surface thanks to trauma, and that trauma would be the stabbing of the very sharp shards of iron that are placed into your red blood cells inside your lungs and heart and infused there, and they're sent to go out and find their way through a hidden world, an underground world, until they finally reach a surface where they expire or evaporate into an ether that's ineffable. And that this constant thing's controlled by a will that you have no say so in. You don't really know why you feel a certain motivation in a certain way, except that in the heart chamber you were infused with a certain code, a genetic proclivity for a certain kind of aspiration, a certain kind of I really want this, I really don't like this. So a spin of prejudice after prejudice after prejudice. That's really all DNA is. It's just a bunch of prejudice and code. And that prejudice is you're suddenly realizing, remembering, releasing, putting new code in, corrupting yourself with your own viruses, corrupting others with your own. I mean this in good ways, but changing the code that was naturally there and feeling either good about that or feeling guilty about breaking the sacred orthodoxy. This is why you would have a resonant music of orthodoxy, because truly at the heart of what you're doing in Quetzalcoatl with your DNA is you're saying, should I keep this code? And if you could look at the date, you'd see this code is 20,000 years old. Are you sure you want to change this code? And if you look at DNA, you'll see that you have thousands of opportunities, that most of the messages that are in your DNA are repeated over and over and over and over and over again. It's kind of like you have a marker where you're able to say, look, man, if you see a fucking bear, you need to run. And one time isn't enough. You've written that fear into your code tens of millions of times. So if you want to change your code, you're going to have to find every single instance where you've been afraid of a bear and go back in and say, I want you to lay down now instead, or I want you to use this bear spray, or I want you to, whatever your new tactic is. If you're going to change, you've got a 200,000 year long ledger to change. It's going to take a while. And so the idea of that changing is the solving, the coagula of the universe. And I don't know a better analogy for solving than remembering, because that implies the answer is there. It implies that the question is there, that they're both there equally. So you have this constant breathing of remembering and forgetting and remembering and forgetting and remembering and forgetting. And each of us kind of push our own way because we're purposely born with amnesia, and we die with remembering. When I die, I will remember I used to be a writer before I came here. It took me 50 years to remember that. Like it just did. So that means I kind of did something right. Maybe I remembered wrong, but I still remembered something. And if you have faith in the turtle and the wisdom of the crowd, I'm remembering exactly what I'm supposed to. Even if it means I'm going to shoot Charlie Kirk in the face, or I'm going to set up a psyop where I pretend to shoot Charlie Kirk in the face. I mean, both of those are exercising this concept of remembering. If you're a grand wizard and you're remembering what it's like to bring the world into one majestic order, and you feel that that's the great work and you're doing what you do, this is something that's been written in books after books after books, and these books don't necessarily touch each other. But when you open the Rosicrucian manual, turn to 78, then you open the Masonic manual, turn to 116, then you open the Veda, and you see on page, and they don't even use page numbers, then you start to get to this idea, why are these all ideas the same? And the reason why is because they're all remembered. The great work is remembered. You don't hear alchemists arguing. It's the good work, James, or it's the greatest work, or it's the big work, or it's the great coagulate. No, it's the great work. Everyone knows that. Remember when the term Great Awakening hit? I bet every one of you was like, that resonates with me. What does that mean? What is that about? I felt 100-year old bell, like 1,000-year-old bell ring when I heard that. I thought about the dips of how uh, the rise and change of the temperature of the earth. Sorry, I can't think of the name right now. But this idea that we would maybe argue over is climate change, but really, after you look at it long enough, you see, well, there's this really long bass note that plays, and it takes thousands of years. It felt like that. And it seems to me that so much about alchemy, even God itself, our definition of God, seems to have these resonant ideas. Remember, we knew about the concept of omniscience before we even had the abacus. Maybe not before, but like that's amazing. That is such an advanced concept. This is when animism is still there. This is when we're still don't even know our name when we're drunk, and we're still pushing this idea of omniscience. See, these you got to trust the mythology. And how can you when it's got Oedipus and Narcissus and all these figures in there that terrify you? You don't want to be those people, or you think you don't. So this is you're doing great. Like we're we're doing great. The fact that we're even reflecting on it is proof that the system works. Because all of us are reflecting on it. Even the ones that have few calories, they're still like, "What the fuck's up with Trump?" Duh, 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 duh. That's good, man. That's you're still paddling. It could be a maybe you're paddling with a spoon, but you're paddling, and that's great. I've spent most of my time paddling with a spoon. I'll probably paddle with a spoon again. That's all I got.
Thank you for raising your hand, and I apologize to everyone for dropping off again. It's been some inclement weather. This is 2 weeks in a row. While I was away, though, it did occur to me. The reason I brought that was that I have heard through the grapevine that Trump considers himself King Cyrus, or that other people have mentioned him as that because he's allowing Israel
Yes, that is very
to
true.
rebuild the temple. Uh, uh,
You cut out, Cameron, so I was just finishing your thought for people. I don't know if you're back, but if so, go ahead.
Lauren, you're up if you're ready.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Um, I think part of the solving is remembering that each and every one of us needs to take not only responsibility, but extreme personal responsibility. That's uncomfortable. And I think that through the material world, just sort of freaking out like it is, like we're witnessing, that's leading us towards growth. And it helps when the great work becomes your first love. Everything becomes a little easier, in my mind at least. And yeah, extreme personal responsibility. Once we get to that, I think everything becomes a lot easier. It's difficult though. And that's it.
I think that that's a nice answer to what I mentioned earlier. Uh, that speaks to me better than pulling ourselves up by our own bootstraps. Just start with extreme personal responsibility. I really like that, Lauren. Thank you so much for saying that. And because that seems more accomplishable than pulling yourself up. I mean, that just defies gravity, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. It doesn't make any sense from the first place. Thank you, Brad, for raising your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, the that it makes me go back to the serenity prayer that worry about the things you can change and the things you can't change. So when we look out at the world, it's so easy to get lost in putting the world on or feeling like you have to do something big and grand. But like you're saying, Lauren, if you really just take responsibility for yourself as best you can and really work there, and the more people that just do that, the outside kind of takes care of itself. And I think that kind of like just in a personal way and personal psychology, right? When you witness what's going on in the world outside and the craziness and what looks to be cycles that get just crazier, isn't that the same way individually we will face the same sort of challenges or the same lessons? We'll be in the same loops and habits ourselves, with ourselves, making the same mistakes until we finally fucking figure it out. You know what I'm saying? What's my hang up? And a lot of times for us in our personal lives, right, it kind of unfortunately does take, because of just the way we are, and how easy it is to get in our complacency, that sometimes the lesson does need to get louder and louder and louder and louder until you finally sit there. And I think that's because, like you say, Lauren, it's a very scary thing to take personal responsibility to that depth, because again, we all want to think we're good people. None of us want to like admit like I think most of us aren't willingly wanting to harm anybody. You know what I'm saying? Or some people maybe are, but I'm just saying in general. And so I know I've done. It's like when I've seen reflectively how I've hurt somebody, and even though I wasn't conscious, it wasn't my intent. But when I've seen it, and it's like you recognize it, that's a hard moment, right? Because you can try and justify it all sorts of different ways. Oh, they did this or they did that. But the personal responsibility, and to actually sit there and be like, no, I fucked up. Nobody wants to do that. But I do think that once you start doing that, like, and just I'll speak for me, it's like once I started being able to just own that stuff and say I'm wrong, and like, then I became able to do it easier. I do think it gets easier, and you become more, because you have a little more grace with yourself, and then you can have a little more grace with other people. But yeah, just wrapping back up, I think that you're spot on with that. Just the more we can take care of our own energy field, we're part of the great work in that. That's really huge in it.
Yeah.
That's,
On that, Brad, personally, what I've noticed is that before the great work, I was more like, well, I have to be more violent. I have to be more pushy. I have to stop things that are clearly wrong. I have to create uh, all the force I can, because the only way I would feel moral is if we win. And this is most of my life thinking this way. And the great work allows me to trust the garden more. And if you do trust the garden more, you start to notice actually what really helps. Because what really helps is not to win and to evade or remove an evasion of another species. That's actually not what really helps. What really helps the garden is for you to relax. I know that sounds completely counterintuitive, but I swear to fuck it's true. The reason why it's true is because you're showing someone a posture that if they could take, they would win too. They would enter into a state where they get it. And getting it requires you to sit in a room and watch people scream. Getting it requires you to sit in the room and watch people pour poop on each other and kill each other and take their food away and call it righteous, and to watch a bunch of people enacting their revenge. And that you have to look at all that and you have to say, I understand it. That you guys have to do what you're going to do. And you understand that because you were given the freedom to do it first. I swear you were. You wouldn't fucking be here talking about the great work if you weren't. You got enough of this shit out of your system. You got to stab enough people in the back, to be honest with you, historically, to where you can say, I don't need to do this anymore. I don't need to do this anymore. And when you get there, everything changes. Everybody becomes a flower. Some are really hard to look at. There's some butt ugly ass flowers in there. You start doing this, you're just like, oh my God, I do not want to look at that flower. And then you really, I think for the first time, get to see God. This is what it's like to be God. Like he can just see these things so much better than that, or she can, or whatever. And you really do get to see how constructive it is to hold a posture, because ultimately the way that Trump resonates, the way that Michael Aquino is teaching you to resonate is, where's that prana economy, and can I show someone a posture that's sustainable, that's easier for them? Can I show someone that if they stand in this way, they're going to find this is a lot better? This just feels better. You're not doing it to say this is the moral decision. You're not doing it because look how superior I am. You're doing it because this just feels better. It's very selfish. And you're allowed to be selfish because you trust the garden. If you don't trust the garden, the first thing you're going to go after is selfishness, which means you're killing self. You're trying to kill selves. You're out there to kill selves. That's what you're doing. But if you can understand the system, you can say, I trust the system because I'm part of the system. And really, you're just offering a posture to some people. That posture looks like maybe comedy. It looks like maybe sanctity. It looks like, wake up. It looks like all kinds of stuff. But ultimately, if you have the right posture, it will become addictive and other people will seek that too. And then you start to notice this is how you pace. You can really pace the world this way. I think it's the slowest form of growth. And it's why a lot of people don't practice it. But this is also, we don't actually want to get there. I mean, this is me saying my own dogma, but I think ultimately we don't actually want to get there, which is why the solution is to slow down. Because really, we should be enjoying these pre omniscient phases that we have right now. They're so special. They're so special what we have. And I swear, if you turn off the tube and you really listen to America, beyond the ice sirens, beyond the parties, everything's going great. The bees are not dying. That was a fucking lie. Revenge freaks. Revenge porn freaks were telling you. If you don't believe me and you're new, look that up. You will see. That was all bullshit. The bees were not dying. People who wanted you to feel that way told you that, and if you wanted to feel that way, you believed it. The great work doesn't allow you to see extinction as a sign of failure. The great work teaches you that, fuck, I should have really, really, really taken more pictures of the dodo. God, those guys are amazing. Or we could use a good Tyrannosaurus Rex here. Hey, let's call them trannies. Let's revitalize the transsexual movement because we miss Tyrannosaurus Rex because it's the only lizard that made us feel fucking alive. God, I miss that guy. Fucking wandering in with no elbows, taking our kids away, and then makes you hug your kids so much more. We literally invented the hug thanks to the trannies. The trannies came, scared the shit out of us, and we invented hugging. This is how you trust the system. This is how you do the great work, is you're constantly seeing how perfect this is, how necessary this is to reach this place. Even that story, Cameron, about, I didn't know this. I'd love to learn more about this. That snake being fed all that pitch. It makes me think about the blockchain and people being so fed up that they just feed false information into it. And it causes the Pythos to explode. She explodes because she's overrun with information. And it's just so much that you just end up with this rotting, gaseous battery that's steaming underground that used to know all things. It's all the mythology is there. And if you trust it, you can see, yeah, this is what's next. This is what's happening. And it's such a beautiful place to be. It really is. It's easy to get off track. You get manic, you freak out about stuff, but you can always come back to this and go, oh man, great work. Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. And the hyenas, I think, make you understand why it's necessary. Without them, I don't think you'd see this. Without them, you'd stop and you'd say, this is cruel. We shouldn't do this. And thank God there's a hyena butt fucking another one in front of you. And you're just like, oh, I forgot. Now I know why we're doing this. Thank you. Let's get back to work, guys. Let's get back to work. So they're doing it too. Isn't that necessary? Aren't they the trannies of today? Aren't they the T-Rexes of today wandering around? Hey, you guys, we're fucking insane. Oh, yeah, I forgot. I mean, you guys need to stab each other more. I can't stop you. Can't do that. It'd be the worst thing I could do. So great work, guys. Great work.
Before I jump to Brad, I would like to acknowledge that I mentioned earlier, everyone's nightmare would be fully realized. It seems like, at least when I'm watching the telly, and I know that the telly does have a bearing on reality, but I just want to acknowledge that in my personal life, we say it takes a village, and I have a couple of little ones, and I'm just thrilled with the village and their hands in my children's life and the way it's. I mean, it makes me emotional, and it's beautiful to see. And if the TV has anything to do with that, then I'm grateful. And the outside world. I mean, Brad, thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
Oh, certainly, yeah, man. Yeah, I think I kind of think like you're talking about Cameron, the nightmares. It's like just like with all steps of growth, we do have to face our own nightmares. It's like and face the fears in these kind of ways, just part of the process. But going back to James, when you brought up the other week talking about the frequency, and it made me think in terms of like a band, in like a rock band, like nobody wants to be the bass player, but everybody wants to be the lead guitarist. And what's funny is the lead guitarist and all that, all the frequencies in that playing by itself, yes, it looks exciting and all frenetic, but it's actually the bass player that's actually, the actual root that you need there. But it's funny because, like I said, nobody's volunteering to play the bass. It's not the sexiest thing. But when you start looking at things on the slow frequency like that, and that, like I was thinking when you had first mentioned it the other night, James, that like, for example, a mountain, just think of a mountain, how a mountain would perceive the sky because of the frequency and the length of its wavelength, that yes, it would see in so much more depth layers that we can't. So when you were showing the video you made of the Mercury retrograde, it was like, that's something you had to, compress down so that our frequency could actually even see it and understand it. And it's just like I think that's a place I've found through mine to find a little the peace with what's going on in the world, and how I got over some of the frenetic energy was just that low frequency that's sort of the root beneath it all. It knows exactly the note it's playing, and there's just all this sort of stuff notes up here on top, but that in other words, it being able to see from the long wavelength, it can see the whole thing, whereas the people in the shorter wavelengths can only see this little snippet right here, only know this phrase, and so it's harder for them to see the whole, and it's easier to get yourself worked up and not have that faith and trust that nothing's broken.
I think a perfect example of that would be solar minimum. This is the word I couldn't think of earlier. And that if you're not able to have enough weather data or ice cores or whatever we're going to use to measure it, because it changes over time, that you're not going to understand that there's a solar minimum, that the sun understands. Look, I'm going to go, that's going to take 80 years, and you've only got 30 years of data, and you're going to use this to freak out, and you're going to say all this is happening. But then once the 80-year data comes in, you're going to start to question that and go, well, we don't fully understand exactly what's going on. We really don't, because we're seeing more information. We're listening to the beat longer. We're listening to the sound longer. This is what digestion is. A Brussels sprout's really not good until 8 hours in. It takes about 4 hours to really understand the radish makes me feel better. Doesn't taste like I feel better right away. But like an hour and a half after I had radishes, I'm like, why do I feel so more colorful? Why do I feel different? Why is this better? And it's because it takes a longer time for those waves to come in. You're hearing the bass note. And you don't know if it's a good beat unless you fucking listen to the beat. That's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. It would take that long to even understand there's an upbeat. You would have no fucking idea. And you'd be, well, the world is falling. There's your downbeat. The world should be more to the right. The world should be more to the left. Thank God, help us. Oh God, the world is falling. And this is the sound of music. This is 4/4 time. This is common time. And it's fall of man. Turn to the right, Republican, Democrat, find God, and lose it all again. Ooh, And until you've done two of those cycles, do you even have an inkling that maybe this is okay? Right? You would need at least two. And even then, you need the confidence and to trust the system enough to know, you know what? I think we're going to get ready to swing to the right here. And oh my God, we're swinging to the right. And now you're having fun, because you're predicting this thing. This is why music feels good if you don't know that. I really think that. Your phonological loop's able to predict what comes next. Even when jazz throws it off a little bit, it's just enough to where you're like, oh, that's surprise. And I predicted it. Why do I like that? Because it's surprise prediction. I feel safe in my prediction of what's next, but you're still giving me novelty. This is a two-tiered drug. This is two drugs in one. One is predictability, the other is novelty, and somehow you have found a way to combine them. This is brilliant, and it is. It's fucking music. It's brilliant because it did that. What else does that? And lots of things do, because you find beauty in every predictable novelty that exists. A face is beautiful because it has prediction and novelty together. All of us are that way. And until we're more comfortable with more novelty, beauty will shrink. And as we become more comfortable, the novelty is allowed to expand. The very tenets of what beauty is are changed. And then you got Lauren Hutton. She's got like a big old gap in her teeth. And we're just like, God, that's sexy. And you find that beautiful precisely because we have more calories, that the definition of novelty is able to exchange, to grow, to expand to where we're able to find beauty in that too. And isn't this really what people are freaking out about? In other words, I hate to even bring this up because I saw some guy in chat just getting so pissed off because I said I think there's three genders. So forgive me if this offends you guys, but if you at the pit at the head of this spear are trans people, like they're at the head of the fucking spear right now. And the ones that are saying I identify as this, some of them are doing it for the fetish of being persecuted. I'm not going to lie. You're always going to find someone that's just like, I fucking love being persecuted. I'm going to be that. But it's not all of them, I swear. It's not. And the ones that it's not, you're looking at, I think, probably the most Buddha kind of consciousness you can have. The practice of that, to sit in that self and be the pinnacle of all the hate and all the false love, all the false hate and all the false love at the same time, to be worshiped as something different, to be persecuted at something different at the same place. And if you can still hold yourself inside of that, it feels to me like the ultimate test of selfhood, of that kind of selfhood. And that you would want to come here to this planet, to this place, to this realm, and experience the challenges of selfhood in all kinds of different ways. And some of us are not as professional as that. Some of us cannot go that far. We cannot take that. So we want a self that's just a little bit pushing against the grain, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. But then when you look at who the real shaman are, it's people that are living in that realm. I hate to say this to give him credit, but if you look at the consciousness of what Trump is, he's a shaman too. I know that probably sucks to hear, but can you imagine what it's like to even sit in that psyche for even a day? I would imagine that a lot of us would collapse. And I mean this as a compliment. I wouldn't want to be around you if you could pull this off. I wouldn't find that good. I didn't say he's morally proper. I said he's a shaman. He's practicing deep medicine. And it really does require a self to hold that kind of spell. It's one of the evilest spells you can imagine, and he's casting it. And you're watching that and you're learning something from it. If you trust the system, you're going to have to trust Trump too. Oh. And I think this is where I'll lose most of you. And I love you for it. Don't stay. I get it. I get it. I fucking get it. I really do. There are others like Trump that I would feel even stronger about. Don't worry, he's up there, but it's like when I think about Netanyahu, it's like that's the hardest for me. That's one of the hardest. Is to say this is a child of God. This is really fucking hard. Oh, that's a hard one. And the fact I can't do it, I think is beautiful. Like it's shows you why the work is great. It really is a great work. Maybe being the mother of a serial killer and watching the serial killer go through trial. Maybe that's the same, guys. Maybe even being a serial killer is the same. Anybody have anything on that? I know that's deep as fuck.
Brad mentioned earlier, or he talked about nobody wants to do harm, and then I saw him kind of backtrack just a tad, and I thought of this But the best way I can rationalize it is to just think of the twisting helix of our DNA and how we can eventually decide that the way to not hurt this person is to carve them to pieces. I don't,
If I had spent my whole life tortured by someone in my family, and because of the million reasons, doesn't matter, I'm not able to avenge myself ever. The only way that I could save my stock could be that I would need to perform harm on people. That would be my medicine. And I want you to picture that you're about to enter this place. You're about to walk through the Stargate of your mom, and you're given your assignment. You're looking at your code, right? And you can read your code. You're looking at your assignment, and you're like, fuck, I have to go cause harm. That's what's necessary for me. I can't leave this place until I fucking cause harm. Well, like, can you put yourself there? Can you imagine that? Because if you understand what pain is the portal to God. If you understand that all these things are limbic experiences that connect us to the divine, you understand why this sacred journey, this quest, why you have to do it. I have to go kill 6 million Jews. I have to actually say 6 million. Whatever it is, however you feel. I have to go do this. I have to go do this. I have to do this. I have to take all these people's snap away. I have to call all these people deplorables. I have to spray all these people with shit. I don't think you could do that mission and understand the entire thing. You would need amnesia. Be the only way you could pull it off. Otherwise, I think as soon as you came, you'd off yourself. You'd wrap your own umbilical cord around your neck and you'd choke yourself out before you're born. And guess what? That happens. That happens, doesn't it? And maybe those people are too wise and they can see their code too much. Remember, I've told you before, being ahead of this doesn't mean you're going to survive. A lot of times being ahead of this means you're going to be the one that shows people where the invisible laser beams are that are going to cut your body in half, you know. So it's not like you don't get to cheer because you're ahead, you know. This doesn't mean you're going to win. If anything, you're going to be the first guinea pig that's going to expose the next trap, you know. But if you trust the system, then you're going to have a good death, guys. I want you to have a good death. It'll make your
Well,
life a lot better.
I'll add, I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with the Hidden Hand interviews that came out years ago, but it's just one of the things, concepts that was introducing in there was they were speaking as like a collective that said that they had volunteered, had awareness of coming in here, that they volunteered to provide friction basically, and that took the form of doing harm, like you're saying, and that because it was necessary, and in that it was saying that because without friction, consciousness can become stagnant and complacent and it won't grow. And so they're saying, understanding on that level, that's what's necessary, that they volunteered to come do it, but also expressing that, yes, it is a very heavy burden to carry. It's not a role that's taken lightly but at the same time, like you said, I think when we're born here, right, because this just touches on the fact of suggesting that on the other side of this, we have more awareness of what's going on. And when we are going through the amnesia portal, like going in, we already have an idea, our consciousness of the lessons or goals we have out of a lifetime, but then we're born and we forget it all, and then we're just operating off that internal programming. But I did think that was an interesting idea, of because I read that first at a time where I still believed in the idea that that evil can be overcome and all this kind of stuff, and not really conceiving of it from a place of understanding that just the yin and yang and the poles of a battery, for it to work, for it to power anything, that there is a necessary friction, because it's so easy to look at how just horrible some of the harm in the world is done, and obviously you have this reaction, but that reaction in and of itself was the purpose from a higher level.
Yeah. I've had a lot of success redefining evil as being the lack of you, and that you do still get to fight with evil, but you've redefined what evil means. and evil is just unconscious, that which is unconscious. And so, and then if you start to look at the world through this way, you see really that actually is the cause of all evil. It's people being unconscious of what they're doing that allows them to do that. So then the fight between good and evil is back on, which is it's a lot of fun to fight for, fight for good against evil. And so I want you to still be able to do that. And if you just if you just change the definition of what evil is to say evil is the lack of me, then you really have a good handle at it, and you're performing the great work. The great work, you still get to fight for good and fight against evil, because that's the evil that you're fighting against. And all the things that Trump does, I want you to picture Native American times, and an Apache has captured you and he pulls your nipples off and just watches you scream for a few days. And you're screaming at God, you're screaming more than you've ever screamed before, and he's telling you how proud he is and how well you're screaming, and he's pulling pieces of skin off you like bacon. And he's offering you deals where if you say a certain word, he won't do something to you, but if you do say a certain word, he'll do this, or he'll do something to the guy right next to you if you do this first. And the entire time you feel forsaken, the entire time you feel that you've never felt further away from there being a God in this world. And that's a cosmonaut. You're a psychonaut on this place, looking for opportunities to step on places, experiences that no one's ever found, and unlock constellations, neurons in your mind that have never been fired before. And that before you log in, you don't have a concept of pain because you're not attached to a limbic instrument. And when it comes down to it, this is really all it is. This is my entire body. Just put my headphones on and now I can hear. And I'm going to say these sounds are horrible and these sounds sound great, but it's really just my input. That's all it is just my input into the world. And if you truly understand the input, I think you reach a transcendence. You end the trance. You reach a transcendence where you're crucified through every instrument. All the instruments of the Alma Christi are used to crucify you, and yet you are still present. You are still conscious. You are still here. In fact, Jesus enjoyed this. He started to enjoy it. And I think the only way he could enjoy it is by understanding the great work, understanding you have to find all these places. This is what lungs do. They find every crevice inside the 5 lobes of your lungs and say, I can put air here too. What is it like to have your skin pulled off like bacon? That's a place where you can put air. That's a place where you can put consciousness that's never been placed there before. And so we do. We have that. And there's another thing that you can really believe in the great work is if you look at what happens to an antelope when it's taken down, that the chemicals that are released give it a kind of euphoria. There's a place in your brain called the epiphysis that's going to fire when you die, and you're going to feel really good. You're going to feel really good. And even as some of the worst tortures are happening to you, there's this other lever that's waiting, an emergency pull. I know it's hard to even imagine that it's there, but according to all science, it's there. According to all anatomy, it's there. Even knowing that, even knowing how there's this weird DMT switch. You guys know this, right? That you're there's this fountain that's constantly saying, no, 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 not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet. And the fountain is declaring the DMT moot. It's subduing the DMT. It's subduing the DMT. It's subduing the DMT. It's subduing the DMT. And as soon as you let go of the suicide trigger, as soon as you let your finger off that, like a suicide bomber, that stops and the DMT can just take over and you just become mythology and latency, and you have this short time period where your kernel, I swear, the kernel of your mind is able to pack everything that you learned, even at that depth, and store it in an informational signal that you can broadcast through an epigenetic antenna. I swear it works this way, and other people will know. I don't want to go in that cave. Something's telling me don't go in that cave that doesn't have oxygen in it, and you're a primal Mesoamerican. this idea is still being broadcast, almost like a black box on a plane, which tells me that your consciousness is literally the only fucking thing that matters here. It's literally the only fucking thing. And the experiences you have are so crucial that there's most of your anatomy is forced into this suicide switch because it has to have that black box data. It has to know what it's like when you saw Anubis. It has to be able to record that event because that is the most important thing to a lung that's remembering and forgetting and remembering and forgetting. And it would lose 80 years or 50 years or 30 years of all that hard work if you died and it didn't thought it down. It's got to write it down. That's all I got. I think we're out of time too.
Yes, James, we are just about a minute over. And, thank you guys for the wonderful meeting today. If everybody would like to unmute and say goodbye, we'll do that. And I just want to thank you guys for allowing me to moderate. And I apologize for the technical difficulties today. But wonderful to see everyone. And until next time.
Yeah, good to see you, Ken.
Yeah,
Great to see you.
everybody, have a good weekend.
Peace and bless. See you soon.
Have a great one. Love you guys.
Great work.